Good dosimetry morning, neighbors. Bright sunlight. This hasn't happened for a while. It's been pretty cold outside. Too chilly to sit much. Hummingbirds seem to have gone down in numbers. A little bit disturbing. I think I had 6 to 8, and now I'm wondering where they are. So there's hummingbird news. But they're around. I can hear them. Or I can hear 2 of them. Talk a bit about dosimetry. Going back into the deeper, older studies, the things behind the things we speak to. So, one of the standards for studying the effect of dosage are body silhouettes. Some people call them ghosts, but it is a silhouette of a body in 3 distinct sizes. And again, this relates to dosimetry and studying the effects of radiation on the human body, because we do this stuff. So, or we did it. It might have been lost. But those 3 silhouettes you're thinking of are 3 body sizes. A child's body size, a female, and an average male. So these are just furry outlines, but the significance is, the consideration is, because that young child's reproductive organs and his whole growing body, every organ in his body is still growing and getting fit to size, you know? Massive amounts of turnover. So that child silhouette was used to study effects of radiation at that child's gonad height. The female is the female's gonad height, average, adult. And the male is used as where your balls hang, right? How many feet off the floor, and it's your balls, it's not the length of your... So, another part of the conversations is that distance thing. The doubling nature of dosimetry, or dose to distance. So the body silhouettes are important and were used for distance calculations for harm. We know it happens, period. We know the risk of it happening the closer you get. That's risk analysis. Another rotten set of videos done, right? So this is what we've studied. This is how we've studied. This is why we've studied. In computational sciences somewhere is a math model of all of this, I'm sure. But it might have been retired, might have been put away. It might just be a part of historical sciences versus ongoing sciences, because we have gotten better. We have maybe moved on from it. I'd like to think it's a huge computer simulation being run on Fukushima, because we have the ability to do these things and understand the meanings of them. So, dosimetry and this body, double body silhouette, the ghost, the mathematical model of human life itself and the impacts of radiation on it is done, has been done. We know what it is. Another way of doing that, I mentioned these before, were nuclear gardens. And these weren't gardens built as tributes to the victims of Fukushima or Nagasaki or any of the nuclear. These were test gardens where a large radiological source was put in the center of the garden and crops were grown. This test was done a number of ways because, remember, we can trace these things in the environment. So it's nothing to spread something over an acre of land and use a dispersion model to see where it landed and see which crops are affected. So that was the atomic gardens. They were circular gardens with huge walls around them. The dose rates inside those were huge. But what the scientists learned is, within distance X, people die, plants die. Distance Y, most plants get sick, very few survive, and at distance Z, the plants live. Some of them actually do a little bit better than the other plants. This is how some plants we enjoy today were bred, were discovered, were found out. Their genetic makeup somehow, or an impact of the genetics, right? These were crops. The seeds were harvested and reused and planted. We still do this today, seed irradiation. It's a science. But the picture of that, the bullseye look from above, of irradiation at the center of the target and everything nearby being dead, it's just how it works. So that dosimetry, taking it back to Fukushima now, why it matters. Is those kids in the park, the people playing, that 5 years later or 10 years later have an unusual reaction. But 1 million people went through the park. Only 20 of them were affected by the park. Another 100 were affected by some flu virus that went around. Another 1,000 of them had their hair cut. So this understanding the information, tying it back, the relevance of it, even that mention of body heights, body silhouettes, gonad height. When I'm carrying the meter, I carry it on my hip, because that's the dosimetry. That's a standard measurement for the group that I work with and the meters that we use. Pretty much. So distance to the source, it matters. Dosimetry in a distributed radiological environment takes a little more time and patience than most people have. Now, why that level of detail isn't being done in some areas of the planet maybe is a good question, especially with people selling these things, these reactors, these nuclear weapons in neighborhoods. It's the next pollution down the street.